If you are someone who tends to spend a lot of time in your head thinking, overanalyzing, obsessing over things through thought and through word, this is a really common pattern for people who have an experience of anxiety. We spend a lot of time in our head thinking and analyzing, and very often it is difficult to connect with your body and what you're actually feeling. Sometimes it can even feel threatening to listen to the signals of your body. So I'd like to offer you a different approach to movement that I call mindful mobility. And I'll start with the word mobility. This is a term that we use in movement science and rehab to mean the active movement that you have at a certain joint. And what I mean by active is that it comes from a place of strength within your own muscles. We do a lot of work in yoga that would classify as passive stretching, where we either use gravity or we use another part of our body to grab something and move it so that it's not an internally generated effort. That piece of the body is just sort of going along for the ride, being moved around. We do that a lot when we go into tree pose and we just grab our foot and put it up onto our leg. You came into that tree pose passively by using your arms to do the work that your hip could have done. So when we go into the direction of mobility, we want to know, what can that joint do for itself actively, using your own muscle strength? How high can I lift my arm against gravity without having to take my other arm and push it up higher? So mobility is very important in our day-to-day life because it's what we use to pick things up and carry things and reach for things. Our mobility is a very functional form of movement. So that makes it a great thing to work on. It is also very effective at helping us to create a better mind to muscle connection. Because if we're trying to create internally generated effort, that means that our nervous system has to tell those muscles what to do. There has to be a connection there. So the process of working on your mobility is going to tap into your neuroplasticity to create a stronger mind to muscle connection. That creates better body awareness. You feel like you can move better, you can control your movements better. You have a better understanding of how your body moves, what different areas feel like. Where is there stiffness? Where is there soreness? Where do you feel like you have great strength and control? Where is your control a little bit wobbly? You get lots of interesting information about your joints as we move through. So that's the mobility piece, active, controlled movement that is very functional. The mindful piece is exactly what we practice with meditation. Mindfulness is paying attention on purpose. And in this application, we are paying attention to the movement of our body on purpose. That is creating that stronger mind to body connection. And as I said, with anxiety, overthinking, self-doubt, we spend a lot of time in our head thinking, worrying, and the brain kind of takes over. So our awareness is like from the neck up a lot of the time, and we're missing out on what's happening down here. And the very important information that we get from our body in the form of sensation. Our brain thinks in words, in pictures. Our body communicates with us in sensation, what we can feel. And we have to pay attention to what the body is sending us so that we know what we're feeling, especially when we're exploring movement. If we're in our head thinking about something that happened at work while you're going through a yoga pose, there's a lot more likelihood that you're going to overdo it and push yourself too far and you're not going to be happy with how you feel the next day. Where if we turn that in a different direction and we drop all of our attention into what I feel in my hip as I'm going in and out of that controlled, active pigeon pose, which is very different from how we usually do pigeon. But thinking about that as an active pose, you're lifting and lowering yourself in and out of pigeon and paying such close attention to the minute changes in effort, in sensation, in where you have movement and where you feel like you have a little bit of a block or stiffness. And you get all this information about, oh, this is how my body feels right now, today. That's the mindfulness component. It drops you into the present moment to pay attention on purpose. So you see how it's this blending of our meditation skills with movement. And this is so important for people who have any level of anxiety, because still practices can be very challenging, uncomfortable, and sometimes can even create a feeling of panic for people who have anxiety. Being still can feel suffocating or like you're trapped. So instead, when we focus on this type of mobility, you are moving. It's a slow, attentive, mindful process of movement, which also helps to kind of retool the nervous system. But you're focusing on movement, so you don't have that pressure, that discomfort that a lot of people feel if they're trying to meditate, or if they're, on their back trying to be completely still in deep relaxation. That can be unbearable for some people. So this gives you something very concrete to focus on, and the movement gives your energy somewhere to go, somewhere to flow toward. This type of movement, mobility, requires a tremendous amount of focus. We are kind of moving into this uncharted area of movement where your brain is sort of like, how do I do that movement? How do I get my hip to go in that direction? How do I connect to that muscle that creates that shape in my pelvis? So it's a very strong focus, which kind of requires our brain to drop down, root down into our body and try to figure out, how can I create connection where maybe I don't feel connection right now? And that's a great thing, because then again, we're working with neuroplasticity, that our brain is building stronger connections to the body. Very strong focus and concentration, which most of us would like to work on. There's no multitasking. Your brain doesn't have enough room or bandwidth to think about other things while you're trying to do these very precise, focused movements. So it drops you right into focus. While we are strengthening the brain to muscle connection, we're working on that neuroplasticity to have a stronger connection, we are also building strength. And that is because we are making that joint, whatever one we are targeting and focusing on, we're making the muscles around that joint do the work against gravity. And very often in specific types of movements that we wouldn't normally do in day-to-day life or wouldn't normally isolate. So we're contracting muscles that probably don't contract like that normally. And they're finally getting to do some work and building a bit of strength through doing that work. So mobility work brings in an element of strengthening. Very often the resistance or the load that we are using to strengthen is our own body weight against the force of gravity. But that can be very effective, especially for kind of digging in there and finding some of the more minute muscles that we don't normally focus on and getting them some strength and kind of waking them up. The other element of mindfulness that we are practicing here is bringing a sense of curiosity. When we work on movement, we start to understand that we each move in a unique way. We're stepping away from this idea in yoga and movement practices that everybody's pose should look the same, or that everybody's hip or shoulder is going to move the same way, because when we study anatomy, we get very clear information that not everyone's hip is shaped the same, so it's not going to move the same way. Not everybody has the same makeup in their connective tissue, so they're not going to move the same. They're not going to have the same amount of flexibility available. They might just hit bone to bone at a certain point, so there's no way your arm is going up any higher than where it's at. So we honor that individual variation in our bone structure, in our connective tissue. All of the different pieces that make up our anatomy are unique from the people around us and the person in front of us, and we honor that by not comparing, not judging ourselves based on, oh, I should look like that, I should be able to do that. We let that judgment go. So non-judgment is one of our key pieces of mindfulness, the attitude of mindfulness. And the other piece is curiosity. So rather than judgment, we swing ourselves around into curiosity. And it's this paying very close attention with an openness to what is here. How does my body move today? How is my hip feeling? How do I get my hip to rotate in just that little last bit of movement that I'm looking for? And that's the curiosity point, and that moves us away from judgment and peels away this layer of pressure that we often have in yoga, that feeling of trying to make your pose look a certain way. We step away from that when we're doing this mindful mobility practice. And the last reason that this type of movement is very helpful for people who have a high degree of stress or anxiety in their life is that we get this practice area to recalibrate our movement. And we do that in two different ways. So we're going to recalibrate our effort. We think about effort on a scale. If it was 0 to 100%, and many of us, especially if you did sports at some point in your life, learned that everything should be 100% effort all the time, or 110% effort miraculously. We get stuck in that pattern. We're always over-efforting, and that can often lead to injuring yourself when you are doing movement practices, because you jump in at 100%, even when it's a brand new movement, something your body hasn't done before. That can create a lot of vulnerability. So instead, we practice this very mindful process of recalibrating our effort. As we go to explore this new movement in the arm, you tell yourself, can I start at 50%? Go through a couple movements, see what 50% effort feels like if you're moving your arm. And you go, okay, I feel the sensations, there's a little bit of stiffness, but it's feeling pretty good. Let me see what it feels like if I go 60% effort. So there's this scale that you can work on, that you are retraining yourself to be able to use the full range of that scale instead of always being stuck in 100% effort, because that is not helpful. That leads to injury and burnout in many different areas of our life. So we're taking back and recalibrating our scale of effort. The other way that we are recalibrating is in our speed. So the actual effort that we're putting into the movement can be maybe 60% or 75%. But if you are also like a lot of modern people who get in the habit of rushing all the time, even when you don't have to, it's like you're stuck in that high gear and you're just constantly revving your engine, where you're rushing through the smallest tasks of your day because that's just your default setting in your nervous system now. So we notice that and we mindfully step into a place of recalibrating, taking back your power over your speed of movement. As we're going through the mindful mobility, we're saying, okay, let me go even slower. Let me double the time that it takes me to go through that movement. So we start to create more space for our brain to notice what's going on. I like to remind people that when we go through poses really, really quickly, it's almost like your brain didn't even have time to process what your body was feeling. The information barely even got up there before you're 3 poses away and you're like, wait a minute, did that feel weird in my hip? I don't know, but you're already long gone. So the teachable moment has passed, where when we slow ourselves down, you get more time for the information from the body to come up to the brain to notice, and then to have that discernment of, okay, that feels all right, it's challenging, but it's all right, or that doesn't feel good, I think I need to change that because it feels like it's straining a little bit. So you get to discern if it's good for you. And that can only happen if we slow ourselves down. So it's recalibrating our effort and recalibrating our speed so that we are actively in control of deciding how fast or how slow we go, how much effort or how little effort we put in. And in that scale, you get to find the perfect place for you to move and connect with your body on that particular day. So these are all of the different ways that this mindful approach to mobility on our yoga mat is quite different from I'll say the typical way that we kind of practice yoga and explore the poses. This is working more into recalibrating your nervous system, harnessing the tools of mindfulness and applying them to what you are doing so that you can exercise your brain, exercise your focus, and learn how to shift out of your mind and reconnect to your body. So if this sounds like an interesting practice that you would like to explore more, if this is something that would help you to retool your nervous system and shift away from some of the patterns of anxiety and stress that you have within you, I hope that you will join me for our Mindful Mobility series. We're going to be working through each different area of the body. We will work through the face and the neck, the shoulders and the arms, the trunk and the spine, the pelvis and hips, which is an important one, and then the legs and the feet. So we pick an area of focus for each of our short practices, and we keep them shorter because our attention span and our fatigue level are going to kind of tap us out a little bit sooner than a regular practice. And we want to make sure that we are paying full attention. So we keep it at a 20 to 30 minute practice for these so that you can really focus and concentrate. But you get a much deeper understanding of how your body is moving, how things are feeling, how to take care of the different areas of your body. You're going to find that some of these movements you're like, oh, that's exactly the movement that I needed. So that is what you are going to learn as we go through these different sessions in our mindful mobility practice. I hope to see you there. Hi there, I'm Laura. Thanks for being here. If you enjoyed this video, make sure that you are subscribed. You can also head over to LauraGyoga.com to get into our virtual yoga studio. That is our community for healing and self-development through the techniques of yoga therapy. You can join us for meditation sessions, therapeutic workshops, live yoga classes. You can check out the on-demand yoga therapy library with over 400 videos and growing every day. And you can also book a private session to work with me as a yoga therapist. You might want to check out one of these videos picked out especially for you, and I will see you in the next one.